Hi, this is Riddick Big Daddy Bo, two-time former world heavyweight champion, and you're watching Cool True Sports.
True School Sports.
True School Sports.
There you go, champ. Thank you.
It's personal between me and you, and I'm going to do you some serious harm, you big stiff idiot.
The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing games are missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, a lot of people have been messaging me on the social media platforms, like on Instagram, some on Facebook. I've been getting a lot of comments over the last few days. You know, BT, True School Sports, True School, Brendan, what do you think about this whole Demetrius Andrade pulling out the Zach Parker fight? Well, this is my video on that. All right, now I don't care what anybody thinks. All right, this is just the honest to God's truth. See, the problem that a lot of boxing fans, a lot of boxing YouTube channels, especially, and just people in the boxing community in general have is that they don't know how to compartmentalize things. They don't have the intellect or the maturity and honesty with themselves to acknowledge the fact that two things can be true. Demetrius Andrade, yes, it is possible that Demetrius Andrade could be up against it and blackballed by the powers that be. But it also could be true that Demetrius Andrade is a victim of his own stupidity as far as his business decisions go. And the same goes for the fight with Zach Parker. Was it shit money that Queensberry Promotions gave Demetrius Andrade and Zach Parker for the purse bid? Yes. But should we feel bad? And what is it, some sort of conspiracy to get Andrade out of boxing? No. Because Andrade did that on his own. And that's reflected in the purse bid numbers. Now, there's some people, there's some channels, and they may watch this video that will remain nameless because they're gonna remain nameless, that are dying on a hill to defend Andrade. Now, mind you, I'm a Demetrius Andrade fan myself, but I'm not such a Demetrius Andrade fan to the point where I can't call things out for what they are. I like him. He's one of the most skilled fighters in boxing. Guys like Canelo and Jamal Charlo have avoided him at one point or another. These things are true, but Andrade has avoided people as well. Most notably and most recently, Janibek. Okay, now a lot of people are saying, well, this is wrong. These purse bid numbers for the Zach Parker fight, it's slap in the face. It's not cool what's being done to him. But the reality is he did it to himself, and we're gonna get into all that. So that is reflected in the purse bid numbers, because you got to understand, Andrade is not in the same position now that he was 6 months ago and some change when he first got when the first purse bid was put through for the Parker fight. When the first purse bid was put through for the Parker fight, Andrade still had Eddie Hearn behind him. Matchroom Boxing put in a purse bid, so that forced Queensberry Promotion to put a purse bid in for the fight. That's why Andrade was due to make $1.1 million, just south of $1.2 million, because there was an overall $1.8 million bid for the fight. He was a WBO champion who was moving up to 168 with a power promoter in boxing with Eddie Hearn behind him to give a competitive purse bid to drive the market value for the fight up. These are the facts. It's a stone cold truth. Now you fast forward, Andrade doesn't have a promoter. He voluntarily gave up his only bargaining chip he had in any negotiation, which I've always said. If you go back and you watch any of my videos recently, before Andrade vacated, I said the WBO title is the only bargaining chip he has. He willingly, nobody forced him. Like Top Rank and Bob Arum and Janibek didn't come to his house with a baseball bat, spike baseball bats and guns and say, hey, drop the damn belt or else. He willingly chose to drop the belt and go up to fight Parker. Now, this move was criticized by many and from the Andrade fan base that will ride and die for no matter what and defend no matter what. It was praised by them. But the reality is, it was always the stupidest move. Because the reality is that WBO world title, although some people will try and convince and tell you that, oh, well, it didn't mean anything. Bullshit. That WBO title was what allowed him to get signed by Eddie Hearn. That WBO title was what allowed him to get these big paydays for fighting, guys that weren't the most attractive opponents, i.e. Sulecki, Luke Keeler, Akavov, quickly, these kind of guys, and he made good money because of him being a champion. You know what I'm saying? So now he has no belt. Now he has no big promoter. He's no longer a champion in the WBO. Only one promoter wanted to build this fight. Some people say, oh, well, they put a call in for nobody else to bid on the fight. And you know what? That may be true. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. But the reality is, Andrade and his team did not have the foresight to put him in this position. Like they weren't smart enough not to put him in this position. Like, how is it that me, BT, True School Sports, just a kid from Dania, I'm nobody in the boxing business. I'm just a guy with a YouTube channel who loves the sport, who knows a little bit. How is it that I know? How can I deeply understand how important that belt was to his career, but then yet his managers or whomever it is giving him advice to make these moves, how do they not understand that they are putting themselves in an unfavorable position by doing these things? It just goes to show you, like, there is a lot of incompetence around the Andrade team, unfortunately. And believe it or not, I gotta go with what Rick Laser said. He's become a champion in spite of them, not because of them. Truthfully, and that shows you how great he is as a fighter. But he willingly boxed himself in. That's why I made such a big deal about the Janibek thing, because I understood what was to come if he dropped that belt. I understood that now you have pretty much, for the foreseeable future, you're not going to be able to work with Bob Arum, because this is a fight that he would have wanted put on his network. So you burn that bridge. You already have a bad relationship with the PBC due to the Charlo situation back from years back. Whether you were in the right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Just it was bad situation. Eddie Hearn's not your promoter no more. So you box yourself in, and while Andrade, it is slap in the face money, while it is bad money, he's many things in boxing. He's talented. He's a multi-divisional champion. Sometimes he isn't the smartest with his business decisions, but he's not a victim. He's many things in this world, but Andrade is not a victim of circumstance. He's not a victim of he's not an outright victim of politics. Like, he's been shortchanged. Yes, Canelo didn't want to fight him. Charlo didn't want to fight him. A lot of these guys didn't want to fight him. That's all true. And you're talking to somebody who's went to bat for him. Like, you're not talking to somebody who just sits in his house and I've asked Eddie Hearn the tough questions. I've asked Canelo himself the tough questions. I've asked a lot of these promoters and these people in boxing for Andrade to get his shot at glory and to prove himself. But the reality is, Andrade is doing himself no favors. And you know what? It's like it comes to a point where no matter how much you admire a guy's skills, you can't be a fanboy. You gotta call things out for what they are. Like you gotta call it out for what it is. Yes, Canelo avoided Andrade. Yes, Charlo avoided Andrade. Yes, there were some guys that avoided Andrade. We're not gonna downplay that here on True School Sports. But what we're not gonna do is act like he's just 100% in the right, that he's this victim of circumstance. No, absolutely not. Like, you can't sit there and complain all the time and be a victim. That's not what winners do. Winners are proactive. Winners make the best of the chips that were dealt. And he was dealt, I thought, on this second go around with Janibek, I thought he was dealt, a good opportunity to fight a guy that people were making some waves about. Undefeated on ESPN, would have got him some viewership that he hadn't had in a while, and he didn't want the fight. And it would at the worst, what that would have did was fighting Janibek would have kept his ass active. It would have kept him active in a competitive fight. Maybe he wins, maybe he loses. We don't know, because it never happened. And fights aren't won by reputation. They're not won by hearsay. They're won ultimately in the boxing ring. And so he didn't want to fight Janibek for whatever the case may be, and he must reap as he sows. He must pay the consequences. In life, you get to choose your decisions, but you don't get to choose the consequences. So if you're a world champion and you don't have a whole lot of options with a world title, you can't drop the world title and just assume that everybody's going to cater and pander to you. That's not how it works. So yeah, all I'm trying to say is, look, I'm not here to shit on Andre. I'm just here to call a spade a spade. He ducked Janibek at least once. Some people would say twice. I only count the second time because I thought the first time he was in a different position than he was the second time. The second time I felt like it was the only option. The first time it wasn't the only option. He still had leverage because he had the belt. Once he lost the belt, he lost leverage, and that leverage is reflected in the purse bid numbers. Anybody who's out here telling you otherwise, that the belt didn't mean anything and the belt wasn't any sort of leverage for him, they're just living off of emotion, and they're not being honest with themselves, and they're not calling it what it is. That's just a stone cold God's honest truth. Now, let's consider the alternate possibilities, right? Because the reality is this: boxing is a tough, grueling, hard, and arduous business. And if you can become one of the few fighters that put on a pair of gloves, that enter the ring in this sport, in the pro ranks, that make multi-million dollars, that become multi-divisional champion, then you had to have some level of competence in the ring so far as your skills are concerned and how you move out with your career. So we'll give Andrade at least that much respect here on True School Sports. Could it be that Andrade has maybe something better? Does he have a better fight lined up? I mean, I would sure hope he does, because I'm going to tell you this. He has had, out of all the years of his career, think about all the years Andrade's been a pro, all the disasters that have been happening in his career. This has probably been the most disastrous year, because if you need a recap, let me give you the recap of how he got to this point. Back in January, the WBO said, you need to fight Janibek. He's your mandatory. Andrade didn't want to fight Janibek, so Andrade worked out a deal with the WBO later on that month to where he could keep the belt at 160, go up to 68 and fight for the interim. And if he would have won that fight, he would have been he could have chose to, wait it out for the for the mandatory shot, or come back to 160 and defend the belt, right? So that happened. They initially said no. Then through negotiations they said yes. Then through the Parker fight then he pulled out of the Parker fight with a shoulder injury. So then the fight was off. He had to get surgery on his shoulder. Then on top of that, then the WBO came back to him and said, okay, you've wasted enough time. It's like June, it's July. You need to fight Janibek because you've wasted 7 months of our time, right? Andrade waits till like the very, 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 very last day to vacate the belt. He vacates the belt, goes up to 168, and gets rid of all the bargaining power he had with that belt. And then now he doesn't want to take the fight that he initially said he wanted in the first place. So it's all a mess. And while he has been ducked and while he has been avoided, and I've acknowledged those things, I haven't taken the videos down in the past. You can go back and see anything I said about Andrade and Canelo and Jamal Charlo and Andrade. I stand by those things, but he has avoided a lot of competition this year. And I hope for his sake, I really do, because I like Andrade. He's still one of my favorite fighters, but I sincerely hope for his sake that he has some sort of backup plan, some sort of contingency plan to have a bigger fight, whether it's with Munguia, whether it's with Benavidez, and damn it, if it's even with the John Ryder at this point, I would be satisfied with that. He needs something. He cannot go all of 2022 without fighting. He needs to get at least one fight in. He's 35 years old. It's the 11th hour. The clock is ticking. Time is running out, and he's done nothing but bide his time, waste his time, and really show little to no effort as far as doing what's best with his career. And that's what it is. Anybody who's out here, anybody who's out here, and listen, I'm an Andrade fan, but I'm calling it out for what it is. Anybody out here who's singing the same tune of, oh, this guy ducked him, that guy ducked him, which I do believe is true. You can't sing that tune for so long. You have to get proactive. You have to find a way to stay relevant in the sport, to continue to, show your level and show your class. And he's not doing that. He wants all the glory, but he doesn't want to take any risk. He doesn't want to take any risks. It's ridiculous. He doesn't want to take any risks. Like, for example, the Zach Parker fight, the bid was low money. It was slap in the face money, but his team should have had the foresight to know what would have happened if they dropped the WBO belt. They didn't, so they willingly boxed Andrade into that position. So $183,000 was what he's gonna make, and that was peanuts. Now look, it's the fight game. Fighters are independent contractors. They can move and groove how they see fit when it comes to their career. It's their prerogative. But just don't expect me to defend every last move. That's not how it's gonna go. Paul Andrade, and when I had him on here last year a lot, used to talk about how they can move up to 168 to become Canelo's mandatory. This fight was that with Parker. This fight with Zach Parker was that. It was that opportunity to go to 168, whether it be with $1.1 million or $183,000. Whatever the money was, it was a chance to go up to 168 and once again position yourself for a Canelo Alvarez fight. Canelo Alvarez isn't going to be active for a while due to some injuries he suffered. So you could have won this fight. You could have taken maybe some lesser opponents until Canelo got back and then negotiated a fight, because you would have been in a position and see what would have happened. But you didn't even give yourself that chance. You didn't even give yourself the chance to do that. You are doing nothing. And I I'm just calling it out for what it is. So Demetrius Andrade is not a victim of circumstance. Demetrius Andrade is a victim of his own stupidity and bad business decisions, and that's it. That is what it is. It doesn't take away from the fact that he's still one of the most skilled fighters in the world. It doesn't take away from the fact that he's still one of the most skilled fighters around his weight, but he is not a victim. We should not feel sorry for him, because at the end of the day, Demetrius Andrade is a multi-millionaire living well, and you know, he's gotten a lot more out of boxing than most fighters. So let's not feel bad for him. You know, if he wants to get those legacy-defining fights in his career, then he should have fought a Janibek. He should have kept the WBO belt. He should have maybe fought Zach Parker for the money that was offered. Or maybe his team and all parties involved on his side should have had some competence to maybe negotiate some sort of side deal with Frank Warren, because those things aren't uncommon with purse bids. Sometimes a purse bid can be made, but then a team can still negotiate a side deal with the promoter. Those things are not uncommon. So all I see from the Andrade side of things, as much as I hate to admit it because he is one of my favorite fighters, is incompetence, unwillingness, and you know, just not having the foresight to know what could happen if you make certain decisions, you know, because in life you don't get a chance to you get a chance to make a decision, but you don't get to determine what the consequences are. And that's what I see here, and that's what I'm seeing from a lot of Andrade fans. They're okay with him making certain decisions. They're okay with him vacating the belt, and they'll clap and they'll cheer and they'll pat him on the back for ducking Janibek, for fighting Zach Parker. But then when that purse bid comes in and that money is looking funny, then all of a sudden he's a victim of circumstance. Nah. Fuck out of here with that bullshit. Andrade ain't no victim of circumstance. Andrade needs to get in the ring any way possible. I don't care who he fights at this point. Just get active and get back in the public eye. And listen, the invitation is still out there. Andrade can come on the channel. I'm not gonna he's more than welcome. He's one of my favorite fighters. I'd love to talk to him. But it is what it is. I'm not gonna sit here and cat for nobody. This is the home of boxing. This is True School Sports. I'm a fan of boxing. I'm a fan of Andrade, but I'm a fan of boxing first. So yeah, he avoided Janibek. He avoided Zach Parker. He wasted Frank Warren's time earlier in the year, because they did put a lot of promotional dollars into promoting that fight, and then he pulls out with an injury. Do you think they want to run the risk of that again? No. There was no other competitive people in the purse bid for the fight. He's now with Eddie Hearn, so he put his own back against the wall. He boxed himself in. But he is still one of the most skilled fighters, and I hope he does get his opportunity to prove, you know, what he can do. And that's what it is. So yeah, I've talked long enough. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you guys take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me. But I'm just a kid from Daniel. So until next time, take care, guys.
And I think True School Sports, he's the truth. One of the best YouTube, the best.
Ooh, the number one.
Number one.
Brandon, you've been there, man, and you're building up a good following with us.
Thank you.
And I'm proud to be a part of what you're doing too. You are spectacular, and
You know,
Thank you, man. All the best to True School Boxing, and keep up the good work.